Okay, let's do something fun. From where you're sitting right now, I would like you to think about where the direction of north is. All right? Now, even if you don't know where the direction of north is, take a guess. When I say go, I want you to point to the direction of north. Ready, set, go. Oh, look how many directions of north there are. Pointing to the direction of north is very much like our own aging process. Even though we end up in the same place, we're going to take a lot of different roads to get there. Think about people you know well. Think about yourself. How different are you from the person that you know well? How different we are from the person sitting next to us. Everybody ages differently. We're living in what I call these are the kind of people I hang out with. We're living in a gerontocracy. Millions and millions of old people everywhere. And the fear of dying has been replaced with the fear of living too long. This longevity revolution is changing absolutely everything. In our lifetime, this will be the family that we can expect to see more and more of. Audio, please. Who are these Martians? It wasn't too long ago that this was the regular family. The 1950s, you were at the top of your game when you were 40 years old. That was then. This is now. You are going to be handed on a silver platter, as we have already heard, 30 extra years. No strings attached. Here you go. They will be handed to you. With those 30 years, we need to ask ourselves 4 big questions, especially as they relate to where we live. Question number 1. When am I old? Right? Are you assigning these numbers different messages depending on what the number is? Many people look at aging like this. You're born, and there's a little curve. You stay on top for a while, but then things start to creep in, and then there's a slow, chronic conditions, right? Other people say, no, I'm going to deal with those conditions, but I'm going to stay on top for as long as I can. And then when I get to the end, I don't want it to be very long. If there is one visual that I would love for you to remember when you walk out the door, it is the one that I have about the aging process. Do you think that how you think about aging is going to impact where you live? You bet it will. Question number 2, who am I now? With age comes evolving roles. We're going to add, subtract, multiply, and come upon all different things that happen in our lives. Do you think your evolving roles are going to impact where you live? You bet it will. A day doesn't go by when some of my friends say to me, what am I still doing here? In fact, it is so popular that somebody wrote a book on it. Question number 3, what is all this age for anyway? Right in your own backyard, 8 to 10 people live at San Pasquale Academy. Have any of you heard of San Pasquale Academy? Some of these people live for the foster teens. Again, living a life of purpose will indeed impact where you live. And if you live long enough, you'll age alone. Never married, separated, divorced, and widowed, we can all expect to age solo. That leads us to the fourth big question. Who is going to take care of me when we're old? Big questions. So we begin the process of looking for answers. We're in search of how we might go about answering those questions. And we had to look at some of the institutions that we've long depended on. And the longer we look, we realize that some of those institutions are stuck in time. Take work, for instance. Are you kidding me that you're being asked to leave the workplace at the ripe old age of 50? Doesn't make sense. How can our houses not accommodate an aging body? It doesn't very often. Social Security. Imagine taking that check at the age of 61, 62, 67, and expecting to get a check for the next 30 years. Do we really think it's going to be sustainable? Who knows? How unprepared we are when people leave us in mid-sentence. How unprepared we are when we don't address our own end of life. Of these institutions, the housing issue is the one that we all can deal with today. This is the one we all have in common. So there's a new buzzword in town. Many of you have heard it. It's called aging in place. Now, I can't assume any of you have the same definition that I do about aging in place. So what I thought I would do is get on the internet, type in the internet browser age in place, and see if a website popped up. Sure enough, it did. Here's the definition according to the website titled Age in Place. So first of all, you do the choosing. You live in the house that you want. You stay there, you get older for as long as you can, and you begin the process of bringing in assistance and services for as long as you possibly can, as long as you're safe, and as long as you have a quality of life. Sounds like a good definition, right? Let's do a show of hands. How many of you would like to age in place? Most people do, including myself. So I'm a picture person, so I'd like to put pictures to words. This might be your picture. You might have a couple of different ideas, but let's start with the outside of your house. You get somebody to start mowing the lawn, and in where I come from, Chicago, you shovel that snow. You eliminate the stairs, so you could definitely get into your front door. No problem there, right? Once you get inside, maybe your bedroom's at the top of the stairs, so you might get a tool that helps you go up and down the stairs, or begin to retrofit and remodel so you can get everything just like before. You get somebody to pick you up and drive you around. Thank goodness for the driving alternatives that we have today. And have somebody check in on you every once in a while. It's all good. And when you get hungry, just drone in your pizza. Not a problem. However, if this is as far as you take aging in place, it's simply a matter of time before everything around you can start crumbling. We have to talk about the elephants in the room. Elephant number one, there is a caregiver shortage. With 77 million baby boomers coming up the pike and people not being attracted to this kind of hard work with minimum wage, hard, back-breaking work emotionally and physically. Who's going to do this work? And will our children want to take care of us? We have a caregiver shortage. Big elephant in the room. When you age in place, you become the CEO of your own home. You are in charge of hiring, firing, managing, and rehiring all the caregivers. Are you prepared to be the CEO of your own home? Good chance we will age solo and get a little forgetful. So now we're home. Are we safe? Are we being scammed? How would we know? Many people think that wellness is just physical. You know, get those weights, get on the treadmill, run around the block, get physically fit. But according to the MacArthur Foundation study on aging, wellness has 4 parts. And without all 4 parts, we are not physically well and mentally and so on. It has to include physical, intellectual, social, and spiritual. All 4 must be present in order to be aging well. Of these, social is the other elephant in the room. It's one thing to be safe and secure and have all your ducks in a row when you're home alone and you're doing fine, but what about isolation? And what about feelings of loneliness? Now, Fluffy and Fido are a good part of being comforted, but I doubt that any of them can make a 911 phone call when you need it. The elephants in the room, as long as you want to age in place, must be dealt with. I have another question. Anybody here drink coffee? Woo! Anybody not drink coffee? A lot of people do, and a lot of people don't. So here's my question. Is coffee good for you or bad for you? Yes, no, bad? If you have changed your mind about drinking coffee over the years, it's easy to understand why. So many research studies have been done about caffeine in coffee. 1 minute it alleviates heart disease, and the next minute it will definitely give you heart disease. Lowers risks, early death, you name it, cholesterol levels. I like the last one. It keeps us sexually active. That one's... Okay, so which is it? Is coffee good for you or bad for you? And if some of you have changed your mind over the years, it's easy to understand why. So here we go again. Now, if you're thinking about aging in place, you're in the same emotional environment as you did when you were thinking about drinking coffee. You're going to have partial information. Some of it is going to be inaccurate, and you're not going to have any idea of knowing how it's going to turn out. You're in the same boat. Drink coffee, age in place. Who the heck knows? But you've been here before. You made these kinds of decisions before you knew what was going to happen. But the big difference here is you were lucky enough to maybe get the right answer right out of the gate, or you had time to make adjustments. This is so not true when it comes to you making a decision about aging in place. Time is usually less because we're going to kind of make these decisions later on in life. So, we hear about this skill a lot, the skill of resilience. The older we get, the better it is to be resilient. When that bad stuff happens, you just pick yourself up and get on that horse again and do what you can to see the bright side, the positive side of every single thing that's going on. Resilience is a good thing. But in this day and age, when all of the challenges about aging are front and center, you will be challenged like you have never been challenged before. Resilience is good, don't get me wrong, but resilience is reactive. Critical thinking is proactive. One of my purposes here today is to look at all the disciplines in the room that are represented and bring this idea about critical thinking into our conversations. This is a big conversation, aging in place. And what I would like to do is jumpstart that process. I'm going to suggest that aging in place isn't a place at all. It's not about the roof over your head. It's not about the four walls. It's not about the color of your carpeting. It's just not about the place. Aging in place is not about old people. What's good for old people is good for everybody. Fresh air, access to fresh food, fresh water, biking paths, transportation, help when we need it. These are not things that old people need. This is what everybody needs. Aging in place is an attitude. When I see someone slowly walking across the street and that person has a walker, I don't see an old person. I see someone who is responsible. Aging in place is an attitude about responsibility. Okay, are you a giver or are you a taker? I invite you to take the following test. You ready? Well, aging in place is not gimme, gimme, gimme. We must be givers and takers in order to be successful at aging in place. Aging in place is about expanding our world of influencers. Keep hanging out with the same kind of people who think like you do and everything is good all the time, and you're not very likely to age in place successfully. What we need are diverse advisors, people who could influence us in ways that we never thought of. Not too long ago, I was consulting with a community, senior residence community, and we were talking about what the future might look like. Of course, we invited the residents, but I suggested we have the housekeepers present. You know why? They know every single thing that's going on in that community. And not only that, but we invited the grandchildren, because grandchildren know everything there is to know about technology. This is what it looks like to have people in your life who don't think like you do. So if you don't currently have people who are 20 years older or 20 years younger, I think it's a good idea that you might start to find some. Aging in place asks a lot of questions. Now, who, what, when, where, why? That's kind of scary sometimes to be asking questions, but critical thinkers go even deeper. Why did you answer that question like that? What evidence do you have? Can you tell me more about what you mean by that word? Where is your evidence? This takes courage to continuously ask questions of the people who are giving us information, because sometimes we may not like what we hear. Every once in a while, I come across a stat that just stops me dead in my tracks. This is one of those. People are not talking to their neighbors. Now, some people blame it on television. Other people blame it on air conditioning. We used to go outside when it was hot, right? Technology gets all the blame. And of course, when we closed up our yards. And I say, what difference does it make? Does it really matter why we're not connecting with our neighbors? I say we got to get on purpose and forge ahead and find out the possibilities for aging in place. Now, the obvious answer is those who can afford it are going to hire people to fix their houses, remodel, hire the caregivers if they can find them. But what about the rest of us? What about those people that don't have a lot of money? Now what? Have you heard of something called the Naturally Occurring Retirement Community? It's NORC for short. Neighbors helping neighbors. I live in a NORC. This is my high-rise in the city of Chicago. We love it in this location so much that none of us are moving out, and we're all aging together. And there's plenty of us who walk around a lot, and there's a lot of common areas. The deck, the laundry room, hanging out by the elevator, waiting for the elevator. Plenty of opportunities to say hi to somebody that you might be attracted to and say, that could be my friend. Now, we aren't all neighborly and friendly, but we do have people we connect with. It isn't this big free-for-all. We are connecting little by little. What we do is we build in regularity. This is very important. If we regularly meet and someone doesn't show up, we know something's wrong. Now, in my Italian culture, dinner is sacred. I have no problem eating alone for breakfast, and I have no problem eating alone for lunch because I'm usually running around. But dinner is sacred to me, and I, to this day, have a very difficult time having dinner alone. One of the best ways to connect with another human being is to share a meal. It's so simple. In my new book, I talk about dozens of ways to share a meal and how to get that going. You will easily find that you will be connected. Just share a meal. The Transition Network is another one of my favorite resources. They offer a manual called Creating a Vertical Village in a High-Rise Building. If any of you are in a high-rise, this is a wonderful resource, comprehensive. What was mentioned earlier is this village-to-village network. Now, this is different from a NORC. It's different because this is a membership. You pay a certain amount of dollars a year, and there's a concierge that's paid, and that person is your go-between between any services that you need, and they're usually offered at a discount. Now, there are village-to-village networks all over the United States. You stay in your home, and then you reach out to the village network. There's a good chance there are many village networks in this neck of the woods. Under one roof, of course, have somebody come or sell your house and go live with someone else, or keep your house and advertise to have someone come live with you. It's a great idea. The reason I like Silvernest is because they have a comprehensive software that really matches you up with the right roommates. Now, earlier we heard this term called co-housing. Buyer beware. It seems like this is a real catch-all phrase for developers, and they're beginning to get that it's so popular that they're going to use that in their advertisements. But if it does not have the 6 defining characteristics of what co-housing really is, you are buying into something it's not. Co-housing. Cohousing.org is a great place to start if the idea about co-housing is attractive to you. No matter where you live, you must upgrade to smart technology. And if you don't know what smart technology is, you need to ask someone who knows. Pretty soon, you will be interacting with medical people, FaceTime all the time. This is the way the world is going. And if you have a difficult time with technology, think about it as you would electricity. It's here to stay. All right. Every single thing that I have talked about already, you have total control over. But what about the moment you walk out your front door? How livable is your community? So you decide to age in place, and you've got everything working out, and you love your home. But what happens when you walk out the door? There are several characteristics of a livable community. Age-friendly is one of them. Now, I am all for respecting all the time the people who are wise and have lived their years. But far too often, I see people pulling rank to think that that is a way to disrespect younger people. We don't give them the jobs they deserve, even though they have no experience. What about that term, terrible twos? It's not okay. Teenagers, young people, I'm all for people respecting people, period. When we speak to each other, we speak to each other with respect. That's how we get through ageism. It's all ages all the time. The Generations United organization and Eisner Foundation has come up, this is brand new, came out in May. I need you and you need me. And this is available online. And I highly recommend that if you are interested in starting to break some of those barriers on aging and ageism, this is a great place to start. Some other keywords that you might want to do some research on are age-friendly workplace, and so on. So these are so many things so many initiatives are highly successful, and we can all learn from each other. A livable community is dementia-friendly. I read about a gentleman who left the restaurant without paying his bill. A woman drives up to the parking lot where she was going to go grocery shopping and forgets how to get out of her car. She has early onset Alzheimer's. All hell broke loose with both of these people and their experience as to what happened next. Imagine if we were all trained to learn more about dementia. This is a store in the United Kingdom, a relaxed lane. What a great idea. This is what we need more of. Dementia-friendly keywords, and Dementia Action Alliance is one of my favorites because they are a membership of critical thinkers. A livable community is LGBTQ friendly. A friend of mine recently went into assisted living, had to go back into the closet because he wouldn't be accepted. He knew it. And we've cried a lot about this one. There's a big difference when you walk down the street and you have the freedom to be who you are. And again, keywords that will get you to more resources. And two of my favorite resources are the American Seniors Housing Association and Leading Age. There's one big piece of the puzzle that nobody ever thinks about because it's not obvious. A livable community is accountable. Everyone is deeply committed to everyone else's success. I never ask people who are, when I meet them, I don't say, how are you? I always say, what's new? And typically what I could get from what's new is the information I am looking for. Accountability is honesty and integrity, not being afraid to say, I fell this morning, and no one is going to take anything away from me. They're going to help me facilitate my success. Trust, the willingness to change. Take that feedback, and then we can go on with our lives. Another resource that's available to you is right in your own backyard. We need to learn how to be accountable. It doesn't come naturally for any of us. ChoiceWorks is one of those organizations that works with organizations and companies and teaches us to lead people to lead themselves. In order to age in place, we will need to be a community of leaders. Do you live in a livable community? Let's go back to July 1995. my hometown. Over 850 people died. 500 of those people were over the age of 55. Now, how did this happen? We had cooling centers. People knocked on the door of their neighbors and they said, come next door. We have air conditioning. Stay with us for a while. They stayed home. They locked their doors. They locked their windows. They were afraid. And how they got to be this way is they became the invisibles. All of this leads me to the third big question we all need to ask ourselves. What is all this age for anyway? It's one thing if you're young and healthy and physically fit to get out there and do whatever it takes to be relevant, but it's another thing to struggle physically, emotionally, and otherwise. We have to plan to remain relevant for the rest of our lives. Now, is this world filled with problems? You bet it is. And there is always some way that we can participate in staying relevant. Even if you're homebound, you can make phone calls, or you can be on the other side of a phone call. And you need to do what you're already doing, and that's by being here today and being a forever student. Keep coming back, and one of these days, I envision one of you, or maybe a lot of you, will be standing where I am in today, telling us about something that you accomplished that you could teach the rest of us. There's someone I would like you to meet. She is my role model for critical thinking. Let's see how she put critical thinking into play. What do you think? She's amazing. Think it was easy for her to get there? No. Imagine the questions she had to ask to get to there. Imagine the people that she sought in order to answer her questions. She would not stop until she found freedom. Now, I've given you a lot of things to think about. Aging in place has a lot of moving parts. And now it's your turn. What is one thing, just one thing, that you could do differently as a result of being here today? One thing will make all the difference in the world for your aging in place. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I'm just so moved, and I know the rest of the audience is too. We'll be collecting cards from everybody. We have a few moments, and I'll start. At what age should you start to plan and think critically about aging in place?
I don't go by age, I go by ability. And I am one of those thinkers that believes that if I can anticipate not being able to do something, then and I think about it, then that's where I would start. So it could be overwhelming. So just think about it in terms of what will I not be able to do if I stay here, and then work on that. So I don't say it's age-related, it's related to abilities.
Okay, thank you. How can people advocate to the local government to prioritize age-friendly communities?
Well, there are resources that I have on the slides, and I recommend that do two things: to become more educated on what's already being done. The United Kingdom is far ahead of us in most all of these initiatives. So find out what's possible, and then hound everybody in the government. Just don't quit. If it's your passion to be hounding the political arena, go ahead and do it.
So you mentioned the statistic about how few of us know our neighbors. Wow. Could you share some strategies that you could use to meet our neighbors?
Well, I live in a Newark, and so there are people everywhere, and I just kind of take a look and see if they would be responsive to me. I say hello to everybody, okay? I say hello to everybody, and I get dirty looks, and sometimes I get a big smile. But I always say hello to people who are in the common space. So I would start there. What happens after that is I see them again. The first encounter isn't where I say, hey, let's get together. No way. But if I see them again, I might say, I saw you 2 weeks ago, and you were with someone, or I love your shoes, or just continuously engaging about anything you can think of. But be natural. Mean it. Don't do it if you don't mean it. And if it doesn't come easy to you, I understand that. It takes courage to say hello to somebody.
You mentioned the importance of sharing a meal. And you also mentioned there are lots of tips and strategies for changing and doing that. Could you give us some of those?
Sure, absolutely. I'm Italian, right? So I make too much of everything. I always have leftovers. So I know the people who live on my floor. I also know who's a single person or not, or aging solo. So very often I will make a lot, and I'll slip a note under the door, and I'll say, would you like to come over, or I have some extra of this. And it's just like inching along. Another thing is there are group meals that are available from the Area Agency on Aging. There are plenty of places where we can go and be a part of a shared community. So I would seek that as well.
Okay. Is all of this that you presented today in your new book?
Yep.
Okay, great. And where can people get your new book?
Well, you can buy it now on any online, or you can order it from your local bookstore. And then it will be delivered to you in October when it's coming out.
Great. And we have one last question. What is the biggest hurdle for most people in aging in place?
Attitude. Okay? Margaret said it so well. Can't deny that we are aging. So we must stay real. The first chapter in my book is called Get Real. And once we stop pretending that we're not getting old, we can get over some hurdles that will keep us engaged in what we need to stay engaged in.
Thank you so much, Joy.
You're welcome.